right, can we give it up one time for musicians? Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for this. Good morning, church. Can all you smile at me and say good morning? Good morning. Oh, that makes me happy. Good to see you guys here on this rainy morning. College football season is upon us. Thank you, Jesus. And life is good. Why don't you stand to your feet with me? My name's John. I'm one of the pastors here. We're going to get ready to read and honor God's word. We are in the midst of a brand new series called The New You. Turn to your neighbor and say, The New You. Not that the old you was bad, but the new you is even better. The new you, and we're going through the book of Colossians. The book of Colossians is a letter written by Paul, one of the big deals of the Christian faith, and he's writing to this church that he loves, that he cares about, that he spent time with, and he's reminding them about who they are. Now, this is important for us because even though this spans, at this point, centuries now, we have these writings that are true to humanity. And so as we approach this new series called The New You, we are talking about being introduced to who we are in Jesus and how we were designed to thrive. How many of you would like to thrive in this life? Anyone got a vision for life beyond just survival? And so if you're here and you're not a Jesus follower yet, if you're investigating God, faith, spirituality, we're thrilled that you're here. I'm hoping that you will get a window into what it could look like if you were to decide to follow Jesus, and you'll actually have an opportunity to do that this very morning. Last week we talked about the war being won. We used the prevailing analogy of if the Emancipation Proclamation, the sort of freedom announcement to our soul was signed when Jesus was raised from the dead, then this week is talking about the ramifications of that reality being walked out in this present day and age. Are you guys feeling good? You guys ready for this? You guys look good. Looks like everyone showered, changed, brushed their teeth. Your neighbor's very thankful for that. We're going to be in Colossians chapter 3 if you want to flip there in your Bibles. If not, we've got this up on the screen. I know everybody's wondering, so I want to go ahead and assuage your curiosity here. The Florida Gators did win their first game. They are currently undefeated. Undefeated. We've only played one game, but we're undefeated. We have an offense. Granted, we played a high school team, but thank God we scored 53 points. I'm just saying. Canes, how many Hurricane fans do we have? Y'all have a game tonight? I'm a little torn because I grew up down here as a Canes fan until I was converted and began walking in the light as a Gator fan. So I root for the Canes when we're not playing the Gators, but you're playing LSU, which is a SEC team. So I'm a little conflicted. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's okay. Let's get back into the Bible. Colossians 3, why don't we stand, because you already are. Let's just read. Let's do that. Verse 1, if then, everybody say, if then you have been raised with Christ, seek those things that are above. How many of you memorized this last week? Anybody? If then, let's see if we can say it from memory. Don't look at the screen. Ready? If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Okay, now you can look. That's good. Give yourselves a hand. Yes, some of you were really excited about that. I like that. All right, verse 2. You can read this with me, but let's read this together. Verse 2. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are of earth. That's so good. Let's read that again together. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are of earth. Paul says, because you died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Messiah, when Mashiach, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. Would you join me in prayer? Jesus, speak to us this morning. We would love to hear your words. And if you agree, say amen. Turn to your neighbor, give him a high five. Last week was all about standing up. This morning's message is entitled, Sit Down, with that you may be seated. The message this morning is entitled, Sit Down. And I'm wondering if you've ever been here, have you ever been in a space, in a situation, in a scenario where you felt completely stuck or trapped only to find out it was all in your head? You ever been there before where you felt completely stuck or trapped only to find out it was all in your head? I remember having a conversation with Missionary Sam. For those of you who don't know, Missionary Sam is one of our amazing missions partners. He and his team work all throughout Southeast Asia, literally rescuing kids out of human trafficking and sex slavery. He's actually coming and speaking on October the 14th. So if you have not heard Missionary Sam, you definitely want to be there for that and bring a friend. It is amazing and heartbreaking and eye-opening and inspiring all at the same time. But I remember the last time he was here speaking with Missionary Sam, we were driving in a car together, and I said, hey man, what are some things that have happened lately that just kind of hit your heart? Like, what's God speaking to you? What's happening in your life? And so we were dialoguing and said, you know, John, I've been doing this almost over a decade now, but every now and then I still have a moment that just cuts me to the core. And so he began to share this story. He said, you know, recently we were able to do a rescue, and we rescued out something like 100 kids out of human trafficking, which is amazing. He's like, we rescued these kids out, and so we brought them out, and so we were transporting these kids. They do a whole holistic approach to anti-trafficking efforts. They rescue kids, they get them rehabilitated in children's homes, they bring them medical care, as you can imagine, psychological treatment, the gospel. They let them know God loves you, God cares for you, God values you. They get them adopted into Christian homes with loving families, and so they got this whole thing going. So they rescue these kids, and he's driving in a car with a few of his team and a few of the kids, and they've got a bunch of different vehicles, and one of the girls sort of looks at him as she realizes what is happening, as she realizes, I'm out of this space and I'm going to be set free now, and she asks this question. She asks him, why would you rescue me? Now, in his mind, he just sort of put the emphasis on the word rescue. Why would you rescue me? And so he goes to go through the litany of this is why we went around, it was worth all the danger and all the logistics and all the time and energy and effort and manpower that it took to rescue. And he's going through the whole process of the rescue process. And she kind of stops and she says, no. Why would you rescue me? And he realized, she was asking a different question. He said, what do you mean, why would I rescue you? And she said, don't you know I'm a Dalit, I'm an untouchable. Don't you know my life is worthless? And he said, you know, John, we're dealing with a cultural framework and a tradition where for thousands upon thousands of years now, a whole subset, a whole people group have been told that they have no value and no worth, and God didn't create them. And so even though officially within the governmental system, a lot of these things have been destroyed and abolished, you're still dealing with a reality where people believe this about themselves. And he said, man, it was one of the most heartbreaking things to remember. Not only is enslavement terrible and terrifying, but it's even worse when kids feel, I just deserve this. And he said, I'm looking at all these beautiful individuals, loved by God, created by God with so much value and worth, still believing the lie that they are nothing, worthless, less valuable than livestock. And even in the midst of a cultural context where officially the governmental position is these things don't exist and the caste system has been done away with and all this stuff is gone and every single human is valuable, you have these children, adults, individuals still functioning off this old information. Why? And here's the principle here, and I need us to grasp this because this is significant and applies to us this morning, because the truth won't be able to truly change you until you truly believe it. You say, John, that's not the reality anymore. That's not the case. The official government position is this. Here's the thing. Truth can be true, but it won't be able to truly change you until you truly believe it. We spoke last week about some of the truths if you're a follower of Jesus. We said, Paul's reminding the church in Colossae who is being pressured from all sides to try harder and do more, and you're not good enough in and of yourself, and that's great that you have Jesus, but you got to get some more things on your little resume to God if he's going to let you in. And Paul is writing and saying, listen, realize who you are. You've been raised with Christ. You are seated with Jesus. You have access to God. You can walk your entire life with God. He's reminding them of this earth-breaking, ground-shaking, incredible reality of the identity that they have in Jesus. And in the same way that there's a heartbreaking disconnect with these kids in Southeast Asia, I fear that it's the same case for humans across the board. Because here's the thing, in the same way with this kid, that although governmentally and legally things had changed, here's the reality. No matter what has happened legally, if you don't change the way you think, it will never happen practically. I need us to catch this because I know we live in a world that's very theoretical and we oftentimes say we believe conflicting things, but this is the reality. No matter what has happened legally, if you don't change the way you think, it will never happen practically, actually. Let me illustrate this. If I were to say theoretically, let's just say theoretically, I was like, hey man, I hid a $20 bill under one of these chairs. Right? And I theoretically did that. What would you do? You start thinking about, oh man, what could I do with that money? Your salivary glands would start to peak as you begin to think about the Chipotle if you're sanctified, or the Moe's if you're still figuring stuff out. Or you begin to think through, man, what could I buy with this? If I was like theoretically, but then if I was like, no, I actually hid a $20 bill under one of the seats and it's there right now. No, like I actually hid a $20 bill under one of your seats and it's there right now. I really did. I'm not lying. You should probably check. I actually did that. There's a white envelope under one of these chairs, and it has $20 in it. And there it is! Whoa, Jaleesa, welcome to South Florida. That was a good seat pick. There it is. You can take somebody out to lunch. Chipotle on Jaleesa, somebody. Let's see who her best friend is. Hey! Now, what just happened there? Did everybody witness this social experiment we just did? What happened when I talked theoretically about a truth that was actually the case? What happened? Nothing. What changed in the room? Nothing. What did people do? Nothing. Why? Because you didn't believe it. Was it true? Yeah. Was it there? It's been there since 8 a.m. this morning. You're like, man, I need to check for gum under the chair, do a little cleaning for the church, and this would be great. But what happened? As soon as you believed the reality of what was, this whole room changed. Everybody starts looking. Everybody starts, man, today's my day. Well, I prayed this morning. And everybody starts looking. Why? Because things might be true factually, but until you internalize that truth, it can never change you actually. And in the same way, when Paul is advocating to the church and to us this morning, when he's reminding us of who we are, this is the power, because when you set your mind on things above, when you make a conscious decision to sit down on the truths of what God says about you and the realities about what God has for you, when you sit down, chew on, meditate on, set your mind on things above rather than things of earth, on the realities of heaven, it changes things. Literally, practically, eternally. This morning I want to talk about sitting down. I got one core idea, one big thought for the morning. If you're taking notes, I would encourage you to jot this one down. The thought is this: if you want to live up to the truth about you, you'll need to line up to God's thoughts towards you. If you want to live up to the truth about you, you will need to line up to God's thoughts towards you. In other words, and to put it more succinctly, the new you requires new thinking. Matter of fact, why don't you turn to a neighbor, let them know that. The new you requires new thinking. The new you requires new thinking. So I want to jump in and unpack this together. I've got 3 stopping points along this proverbial journey. I don't know why you guys are doing spirit hands at me. Yeah, go team. Okay. The new you requires new thinking. Number 1 is you need to understand the power of thinking. Number 1 is you need to understand the power of thinking. I've been doing a bunch of research on the mind, the brain, thoughts, and thought life, and I came across a recurring theme that was very new and intriguing to me. I was reading one specific article from a medical journal, and it was this doctor talking about a patient who was dead set convinced on the fact that she was pregnant. I mean, they were decorating the nursery, they were getting all the baby clothes, they were getting everything ready, they were so excited. They had their baby names picked out, boy, girl, they had all this thing going. There was only one problem. She was not pregnant. The doctor was like, ma'am, I am so sorry. You are not pregnant. She's like, yes, I am. No, you're not, actually. Like, empirically, you're not. Yes, okay. And so, but what happened was actually interesting. What happened is that the woman's body actually began to change as if she was pregnant. She started gaining weight. The belly came out. I don't think she was just eating a bunch of junk food. The doctor was like, no, it was crazy. And what they found is that medically, this is like a thing, apparently. It happens. Like people, when they are so dead set and convinced, their body will begin to follow suit. Doctors say this is a real thing. Now, immediately where my mind went to is to the Bible, because God is smarter than any doctor I've ever met. Doctors are smart. God is smarter. In Romans 12, there's a Bible verse, and Paul's writing this, and he says, hey, don't be conformed to the patterns of this world, he says in Romans 12, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You ever heard this verse before? Don't be conformed to the patterns of this world. Don't just go on living like everybody else just because everybody else does, but be transformed. How do you be transformed, Paul? By the renewing of your mind. Now, this is the Bible, so I want to be clear and get the chicken before, the egg before the chicken, however that phrase goes. This is the Bible, which means it is true, right? Like God spoke, he didn't stutter. We here at Greenhouse, we love the Bible. We believe it's God's word. We believe that if the God is big enough to create the cosmos out of nothing, he's competent enough to take care of one little book, right? We believe the Bible, it's true. What's interesting to me is that science is finally catching up to realize this. I was reading an article, or a book, and reading a bunch during this week. And there's a book called Switch Your Brain On by Dr. Leaf, who is a cognitive neuroscientist who also happens to be a follower of Jesus. This is what she said in her book. She said, it is with our phenomenal minds that we understand the truth set down in our spirits. It is with our minds that we wire these truths into the brain, which is part of the body. It is with our minds that we choose to develop the spiritual part of who we are. And, quote, she quotes a Bible verse, therefore put away all filthiness, rampant wickedness, and we receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls, James 1:21. It is with our minds that we reject or believe the lies of the enemy, the father of lies. And I want you to key in here because this is where all the research is going now when it comes to the brain. And it is with our minds that we change the physical reality of the brain to reflect our choices. Some of you remember a few weeks ago when we talked about, I don't remember what we were talking about. We talked about something amazing in the Bible. We talked about a lot of the neuroscience when it comes to synaptic pathways and how the more you engage in a certain action or thought pattern, the easier it becomes because these pathways grow closer and closer together. And as I'm reading more about this, the author goes on to talk about the current research, whether it's in cognitive psychology or brain studies, where we are now learning that you can literally change your brain based off of how you think. Which is funny to me because someone else talked about that a couple thousand years ago. Who was it? God. Don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. How? By renewing your mind. Literally. We're stumbling on this like, whoa, look at this innovation we found. We are so intelligent now. And God's like, I've been talking about that for a couple thousand years. Glad you caught up. He said, what are the ramifications? It's interesting to me because in case you thought God was just playing around or being metaphorical or pie in the sky religious, I hope you realize, and we are realizing now in science, oh, God was for real. Like, he really meant that, what he talked about. And science is finally starting to catch up with the truth about us found in God's word. You say, John, if this is so literal and true, what else in the Bible is? All of it. All of it. What's interesting is this thought isn't just some rogue, isolated thought. It's actually echoed all throughout Scripture. I need us to grasp the power of thinking. Otherwise, I think we would be tempted to say, it's just some little thought, John. I know that's not true. It's just something I kind of let hang around in the recesses of my mind. What's the big deal with how we think? It is a huge deal, friends, and the Bible makes that abundantly clear. In Proverbs 23:7, Solomon writes and he says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. When it comes to this idea that Paul is advocating to the church then and now, set your mind on things above, not on things of earth. Why? What's the big deal, Paul? What are the ramifications? What's at stake? Here's what happens. You will get what you set. When it comes down to it, we're learning, man, you are going to get whatever you set your mind on. You set your mind on, man, this is just going to go bad and this is just going to go horrible. Man, you are going to get what you set. Setting your mind on the truth of God's word. We were up in Gainesville sermon prepping, and Pastor Matt, who's a good friend, he's a microchurch pastor in Gainesville and a mentor of mine, we were talking, he's like, man, it's funny. I can definitely connect to this. Growing up, I was terrified of public speaking. Can anybody relate to that? Terror of public speaking. Apparently, it outnumbers death, so some of y'all are just lying because you're terrified to even raise your hand right now. But he was saying, yeah, man, like every single middle school, high school, if I had to do a presentation, you could bank on it. I am vomiting in the bushes before school every time. He's like, the irony is now he's a preacher. Like, he gets up on stages and preaches and does a great job for a living. And he's like, you know what? I said, what changed? He's like, what changed, honestly, is I just had to shift my thinking about the topic. I just started thinking and this isn't in a public speaking class I took at UF. This might help somebody. If you're a leader in the room, if you have to speak to people, this is going to help you. In public speaking, they say, listen, nerves and anxiety when it comes to speaking publicly are human. Like, if you don't have that, you might be an android And so they said, what you have to do is you have to mentally recategorize your emotions. It's like ninja stuff in the mind. They said, what you have to do is you have to say, I'm feeling these emotions right now, but I'm not nervous, I'm excited. My first 4 years of preaching, that got me through right there. People were like, how you feeling? I'm like, in my head, I'm like terrified. In my mouth, I'm like excited. And gradually, you know what happened? I started getting excited. When we look at stuff, it's what's called neuroplasticity in the brain. It's what's called a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. The fixed mindset is this idea of, man, Pastor John, this is just who I am. This is just the way I am. It's just a growth mindset is, this might be the way I am, but it doesn't have to be the way I stay. I can grow. I can move forward. I can be transformed by the renewing of my mind. We're learning, and when it comes to science, what the Bible's been telling us all along, which is that it's possible to change the way you think, which will change the way you live, but it is hard work. It takes deliberate focus, attention, energy, a long devotion in the same direction, but ultimately it is so worth it because your real life will follow your thought life. This is what we're learning. Overwhelmingly, as a man or woman thinketh in their heart, King James say, so is he or she. Your life will follow your thought life. So I want to pause for a moment and be clear. A few weeks ago, I went to visit one of my best friends who's battling mental illness right now, literally fighting for his life. And I think when it comes to the topic of our thoughts, if this room is indicative of the realities in our culture, the vast majority of our culture at this point, or at least the majority of our culture, is dealing with some sort of an anxiety disorder, bipolar, depression, whatever the case might be. Let me be clear what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying to you is coming to you and saying, hey, listen, your thinking caused this. You need to if you just would have thought better, you wouldn't be in this spot. What I'm not saying to you is, hey, if you just take this magic pill and think more positive, everything's going to change overnight. And you're like, man, now I feel amazing. Oh, when you float up with the angels every single morning. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm not saying, and I pray to God this will come across right, because I don't want you to feel beat up or condemned. I'm praying that this message inspires hope, and anybody in our faith family who's battling mental illness feels that we are coming alongside of you saying, we got your back, and we are with you, and we love you, and you're not going through this alone, and you matter, and Jesus loves you, and you are going to be an overcomer. But let me be clear with what I am saying, because what I am saying is based on God's word, which is true, and the science, which is stumbling upon the same truth God's been trying to tell us all along. What I am saying is if you can learn to set your mind above, and set your mind on things above, that day by day and week by week and year by year, it can get easier. Little by little, maybe it's incremental change, maybe it's poco a poco, little by little, but eventually things can change. Have hope. Have hope. If you want to live up to the truth about you, you'll need to line up to God's thoughts towards you. To be the new you requires new thinking. Why don't you say that with me? To be the new you requires new thinking. You say, all right, Pastor John, I get it. This is a big deal. What am I supposed to do with it? If step one is to understand, and I hope are you guys tracking with me, the power of thinking? Like, I hope you're understanding this is a big deal. There's a lot at stake. Once we understand the power of thinking, we need to go to the next biblical mandate, which is number 2, take control of your thinking. The second stopping point, number 2, the second thing I want you to take a note on is take control of your thinking. Paul says, set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are of earth. The first step here when it comes to taking control of your thinking is to eliminate the bad. To eliminate the bad. 2 Corinthians, Paul's writing to another church, and he says this, "For though we walk in the flesh, we're not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare, they're not fleshly or carnal, but they have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God." And I want you to key in on this phrase, "and we take every thought," what does it say? "Captive to obey Christ." We take every thought captive to obey Christ. See, here's the power of when you set your mind on things above. When you set your mind on things above, it recalibrates your soul in a way in which you are in touch with heavenly realities and the truth that God has to say about you, and it allows you to even have a schema for which thoughts should be allowed to stay and which thoughts even need to be taken captive, and which thoughts we should just let live. Let me illustrate this with a very natural thing that I think gets this point across. My wife, Nancy, is beautiful, amazing. She is a great leader. I love her so much. She is fine and godly, and she's just great. And I look up to her in so many ways, and she is strong, and she is valiant. And when my son busted his lip, I was like, I start freaking out. She's like, "I got this." And she's like, if I talked about my mom last week being like Xena warrior princess in the spirit, my wife is like Superwoman, all right? She's just like, boom, there she is. She's amazing. But God forbid a cockroach comes into our household, all of that goes out the window, all right? Like, I remember any cockroach haters there, anybody like, man, give me anything, just not a cockroach. Okay, some of y'all, I'm that way with spiders, so I can relate. I'm not judging. I remember we first got married. Nancy, you remember this? And like, we're still getting to know one another, right? Kind of in that honeymoon stage. I'm like, oh, she's so good. She's so sure. And so you just kind of believe whatever happens is, and so all of a sudden, she's in the kitchen, and I just hear like the most blood-curdling scream, and I just thought she just chopped her finger off. Like, that's the only explanation I could come to. And so I come running out there as her strong, valiant protector to the rescue, and I see this little bitty cockroach. And she is, no lie, on the countertop at this point. Like, I'm like, if we put cockroaches out there on the high jump, she would be straight. Like, it would be great. Here she is, she's out there on the countertop, and I was like, wow, good jump. And I was like, oh, wait. And I was like, what's it? She's like, a cockroach. I was like, really? All this for that? I've tried. You say, John, it's just a cockroach. What's the big deal? My wife has determined that cockroaches are a result of original sin in the fall, and they are straight from the pit, and they deserve to be eradicated from the planet. And when we get to heaven, she will ask Jesus, why the roaches? Come on, Lord. You say, John, it's just a little cockroach. I mean, what's the big deal? Can't you just tell your wife it's not a big deal? I've tried that before, and I almost died, so I don't do that anymore. See, but my wife has decided that to some people it might just be a little cockroach, but to her, it can't stick around any longer, and it needs to be eradicated from our house and our life, and if she could figure out the science behind it, from our world. But apparently even atom bombs can't kill a cockroach, so I don't know what we're going to do there. And we laugh, and it's funny, but it's a parallel that I want us to connect with, because this is the same reality with our thoughts. See, what I fear is that when it comes to our thinking, we fall into stinking thinking. But we just think it's not a big deal. I mean, John, it's just a little destructive thought. I mean, I just kind of push it back there, it's not that big of a deal. And we have these thoughts that are toxic and deadly, that have the potency to change our brain and thereby change our life. And far too often, we just let them crawl around in the recesses of our minds, unengaged, undeterred, because we're like, what's the big deal? And the big deal is that these little, this is like the most crude analogy. Some of you are like, I hate you right now. Stop talking about cockroaches. But the reality is a lot of our minds are like little spiritual roach motels with these little mind cockroaches crawling all over the place, and we're like, it's not that big a deal. And sometimes a thought is just a rogue thought, and it's like, oh man, that's crazy. And some thoughts need to be taken captive and brought to the obedience of Christ. See, we're actually figuring this out in our culture right now. I don't know if you knew this, right now there are entire rehab facilities, like lots of them popping up all over Japan for video games. Because what they've realized is, man, we just thought it was some little innocuous thing where it's like, oh, it's just a time waster. And now we're realizing, wow, it's actually an addiction that is changing people's brains and destroying their lives. What's happening right now with pornography in our culture, which is overwhelmingly the norm for both males and females right now, is we've just kind of left it like a little cockroach. Like, it's kind of weird or maybe gross. Or it's fine, man. I'm not going to judge you. You do you. I'm going to do me, whatever. And so we've just kind of let it run free in our society to the point now where the generation after me, Generation Z, is just normative for them to look at this. And I know we have different ages here, so I won't get into all the details there. But what we're realizing is that in the same way that we have to treat drug addiction as both a social, emotional, spiritual issue, but also a physiological issue, and in the same way that we have to treat alcohol addiction as both an emotional, spiritual, but also physiological issue, the same thing is happening with pornography. It is literally destroying our brains. Like the neuroscience on it, they're realizing, oh my goodness, what have we let get all up in our culture? It is destroying kids before they even have a shot. Before their brains are even fully formed, they're getting all unwired. And so we're starting to see now rehabilitation facilities pop up for pornography because we're realizing this was a way bigger deal than we thought it was, and we let it run rampant in our minds. You don't have to answer this question, but I want to ask you because I care about you and I love you. And I ask the same question to myself. Are there cockroach thoughts living in the darkness of your mind that even this morning you need to send out an eviction notice? I mean, put out the spiritual raid and say, no longer. And it's time to take some thoughts captive. Number one, in taking control of your thinking is to eliminate the bad, which then helps us to embrace the good and the true. In 1 Peter 5, we're reminded of some amazing promises afforded to children, heirs, sons, and daughters of God through the sacrifice of Jesus. 1 Peter 5 says, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Philippians 4, 6-7 says this, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. I love how honest the Bible is here because it's not saying, hey, if you're a good religious person, just sort of bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not there. It's not saying, hey, you just kind of explain it away or pretend it away and things won't happen. It's not advocating ignoring issues or brushing them or pushing them away. What it's saying is if you've got things you're nervous about, be honest with it, own it, and then bring it to God. Because you will wither when you sit down on your problems. You will wither from the inside out when you sit down on your fears and your issues and your anxieties. But if you can set your mind and sit down on God's promises and his faithfulness, you can bring those obstacles and persevere right through them. How many of you have ever been in the Empire State Building? Anybody ever been there? Is there an elevator to get to the top? Because I think we took the stairs and I think I almost died. Did we not take the stairs? I just remember it was very long experience, and my patience was being tested. What happens when you go to the top of the Empire State Building? You spend a lot of money, you get up there, and everything looks different, right? Because when you're on the ground level, there are certain things that seem so congested and chaotic, and it's unclear, and then you get to the top of the Empire State Building, and you realize that certain things that seemed like such big deals and so significant from down below are really not that significant when you get up high. And things that were so cloudy and so congested and so New York City crazy, when you get up top, you see a little bit of a grid working there, and you see a little bit of some continuity, and you realize that things that you thought were not a big deal are actually much bigger deals than you realize. This is the beauty of enlisting heaven when dealing with earthly realities. See, it's not simply about ignoring earth realities or trying to brush them away. What Paul is advocating here is a more holistic approach to life where you accept and deal with earthly realities, but you enlist heaven's perspective in the issue. Paul says in verse 2, set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are of earth. I love this because this is what separates the way of Jesus and the path of Jesus and Christianity, if you will, from every other self-help guru. This is more than just saying, hey, if you've got some bad things going on, just don't think about them. Or if you've got some bad things going on, just think about happier things and everything will be fine. This is saying, listen, take your good, bad, and the ugly, scary, hairy, whatever you got going on, take that and bring that to Jesus and enlist heaven's perspective. You say, but Pastor John, I'm a realist. I can't just, that's what I don't like about religion is everybody's just like, oh, how you doing, brother? Too blessed to be stressed, praise God. It's like, you're lying. You're not. That's how you fight with your kids in the parking lot. Too blessed to be stressed. Come on. You said, I'm a realist. If things are going bad, I'm just honest. Any tell it like it is people out here, any people you're like, man, I just tell it like it is. Okay, this is the beauty for tell it like it is people. Here's what Paul's saying. Man, go ahead and tell it like it is. Just make sure you tell heaven's perspective and not just earth. He said, go ahead and be real and be honest, but recognize that's only one side of the story. Your difficulty, your situation, your trial, your tribulation, whatever it might be, that is true, but that's only half the story. My diagnosis is bad. Pastor John, I went to the doctor. It's not looking good. That's true. But your God is a healer. My kids are hurting right now, John. Stuff is happening in our family. My kids are just out of control. I'm like pulling my hair out. That's why my hair is the way it is now. It's all gone. Like, I just can't do. Man, I don't know what to do. That's true. But God said, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they are old, they will not depart. He said, Pastor John, the job hunt, I really thought it would just be like, boom, and I get a job, and it'd be like, look at God, and it's not going so great. And I've applied. I'm a professional applicant at this point, and I still don't have a job. That is true. But David says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. What Paul is saying is don't just be a bury your head in the sand religious person. Own the reality of the moment. But if you want to say you're a realist, you need to be real with all of the story, which is you've got real situations, but a God who is greater and able and has promises for all of his kids. Amen. And Paul's encouragement here and my dream for our faith family, for us as a church family, is that we would be clear about earth realities and honest with doctor's reports and teacher reports and job layoff reports, but we would set our mind on things above. You say, Pastor John, I've been single for so long, I just can't do it any longer. Like, where's my Ruth? Where's my Boaz? Like, what's happened? I've been following Jesus. I still haven't seen him come down from the clouds. What's happening? Nothing wrong with desiring to be married, but don't set your mind on being married. Set your mind on things above. You say, man, I've been believing God for healing, and I've been praying and trusting, and I still haven't been healed. Nothing wrong with believing God for healing. But don't just get fixated on doctor's reports and earthly realities. Set your mind on things above. My prayer is that in the midst of our earthly realities, we would not lose sight of the heavenly possibilities that are afforded to us as sons and daughters of God, heirs that have been raised with Christ, because your real life will follow your thought life. So set your mind on things above. Amen? You say, all right, Pastor John, I'm on board. How do I do this? Which is point number 3, you do it daily. I'm going to have to fly through this because I forgot my timer and I'm preaching long. It's a problem when you get a preacher and microphone. This past week, I was with my buddy that I mentioned. His name's Jordan, and we were out in Colorado and 2 weeks ago now. And we were out there, and one of our other friends from high school came. We just came. We wanted to be there as a source of encouragement, support. We love you. We're with you. You're not fighting this alone. And so he turned to one of my other buddies, Mike, and he said, hey, man, you guys came all the way out here. What do you want to do? And my friend's response was perfect. He said, man, I just want to be with you. He said, I don't care what we do, man. I just want to be with you. And it reminded me of someone. Can you guess who that someone is? Y'all already know, Jesus. Always a good answer at church. One of these times I set you up, it's going to be the devil, and all of y'all are going to feel bad. But it's Jesus. That's the right answer. The disciples were just wowed at Jesus' approach to life. Miracles follow. He takes a little can of Starkist, turns it into Moby Dick, and feeds everybody. Grandma's up doing the moonwalk out the wheelchair, and they're like, what? How do you do this? Some of you are like, what kind of description? It's okay. I just kind of, elaborate a little bit. They said, what kind of person? How do you live like this? And Jesus gave the most, like, it's almost like a tongue-in-cheek, like, little. He's like, oh, guys, it's so simple. I only do the things I see my Father doing. John 5:19 says, man, you want to know how to do all this stuff? Oh, man, I'm just with God. Now, if I was the disciples, I'd be like, taking no, but like how? Like, I don't think you understand. Like how? And it's funny because Jesus tells them one thing, but he's actually been modeling for them the how all along. In the book of Mark, chapter 1, we're introduced to Jesus and the way he does ministry, and we get a full picture of it all throughout the Gospels, which are the narratives of Jesus, the stories of his life and ministry. And so in Mark chapter 1, he's just gotten done, doing amazing miracles. People are getting healed left and right. Demons are coming out. They're running from people, and there's amazing things happening, and God is on the scene, and people are turning to God, and it's incredible, and it's amazing, and it's great. And then they go to bed, and they wake up in the morning ready for round 2, and they can't find Jesus. And they're like, oh, snap. I don't know how to do that stuff. We got to find Jesus. And so they start looking for Jesus. You say, where was he? In Mark chapter 1, we find out. It says, early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus departed, went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. All throughout Jesus' ministry, we see this principle over and over. And I don't know about the rest of you, but if Jesus being like the God-man, like being like God in a flesh suit, if Jesus being God felt it a necessity in his daily life to seek God, I don't know about the rest of us mere mortals, but I think we should probably follow suit in that. And all throughout, we see Jesus slipping away, moving away, getting off alone, and being with God. You say, John, how did Jesus remember and manage to be with God as a part of his daily life? Because he was with God as a part of his daily life. You guys track with me. How did Jesus manage to remember? Man, I only do the things my Father's doing. I'm with God. I'm just with him. That's what I'm doing. God's doing this and I'm doing this. How did Jesus manage to be with God as a part of his daily life? Because he was with God, seeking God's face in prayer and in scripture study and in worship as a part of his daily life. This week, what I want you to do with this, I want you to begin to develop a habit of being with God every single day. I want us to cultivate a discipline of God-seeking. When Paul says in verse 2, set your mind on things above, it's not a one-time thing. It's a daily, ongoing habit that we create. For me, this is every single day in the morning. Every single day in the morning. Sometimes it's longer than others, but every single day I'm waking up, saturating myself in God's word, talking to him, dialoguing with him, listening to him, journaling, because I realize I'm a sheep. I just forget. Bad, I'll just go off there and I'll go off there. Every single day, I need to set my mind on things above. Sometimes I'm writing down, if you want real practical, go ahead and get a journal, write some of God's promises in your journal. If you've got your phone with you all the time, create a new note on your phone that says promises from God, and write every time you come across one of those imperatives, remember from last week who God says that you are, write it down. When I write some of these things down, I don't just read them, sometimes I say them. Say, what's the big deal with saying them? Because I found that I can't make my mind think thoughts. I can make my mouth say things, and my mind has to listen. Set your mind on things above. You say, John, this is hard. This is difficult. This is challenging. And I would say I agree with you. Any new habit, creating any discipline is challenging. One of our fluencies, we talked about it this morning, is God-seeking. We want to be a church full of passionate God-seekers who say, God, if I got a little bit going on, I'm going to seek you. And if I got a lot going on, I know I need to seek you even more. This is one of our passions. And if there was anything worth the effort, this would be it. Cognitive psychologists tell us that shifting your way of thinking and thus eventually shifting your synaptic pathways and your brain composition is hard work, but it is possible. And the beauty of all of this is you don't have to do it alone because he is with you. I'm going to close with this story and then they'll lead us in a final chorus. Over the course of the past 2 months maybe now, I've watched some of our modern day faith heroes in this church family live out this principle. Sean and Marianne Flynn, who are two of our microchurch leaders, they're good friends of my wife and I. She's on our staff as our kids director. Their child, Gabriel, was diagnosed very late in life with CDH, which is basically a hole in his diaphragm. And as she's been posting about stuff and realizing more and more the statistics, Marianne posted something, I think it was a few days ago. She said, I asked the doctor, now that he's survived and it's been this sort of miraculous treatment, she said, hey, I know you guys all keep saying this is like a miracle, this is crazy, but give me the percentage. They said, for a child like yours, who typically gets diagnosed in utero, not like 4 months into their life, for a child like yours with a situation like his and a hole the size that he had in his diaphragm, the survival rate is less than 2%. Like, we're not just like saying stuff, like your child is a walking miracle. And I've watched Sean and Marianne in ways that they could have gotten cynical, in ways that they could have gotten bitter, in ways that they could have gotten jaded, in ways that they dealt honestly with fear and anxiety, where they didn't just brush it away. They were like, oh, this is a huge deal. It never got it didn't get diagnosed. How did this happen? How did this slip through all the medical? And everyone was trying their best. How did this not make it? And they've begun recounting for themselves the narrative of, wait a second. Remember when that happened, and if that would have been a little bit different, he probably wouldn't have made it, but God stepped in. And we didn't even know. Remember when this happened, and if that situation would have been a little bit different, man, there's no way we could have made it to the hospital. We would have never gone to the doctor, but God, and they've realized as they begin to recount the story and look at it by setting their mind on things above, not on things of earth, oh my goodness, when we didn't even know he needed to be covered, God was covering us all along. And I watched the way they've walked this faith journey. I'm like, man, Sean and Marianne, I pray to God I'd respond in the way you have, but right now I'm just saying, I just want to be like you guys. And this is where Paul ends this. In verse 3, he says, set your mind on things above, not on things of earth. John, that's hard, that's difficult. Earth's voice screams so loud, and sometimes heaven seems so far away. How in the world can I do this? Life is scary. This is a crazy world and a crazy time we live in. Paul says, but you died, and your life, it's hidden with Christ in God. This word hidden is not just talking about obscured. It's not just saying like hide and seek spiritually. This word hidden means covered or guarded. What Paul is saying is, listen, you can have confidence when you set your mind on things above, because you can be reminded that as crazy life may get and as wild and out of control as things may seem, there is a God in heaven who is seated on the throne, and he's not pacing, and he's not nervous, and he's not anxious, and he's not working. He is seated. He is good. He is chill. It is done. And he has you covered. And I'm not going to say that death won't happen, and I'm not going to say that loss won't happen. I'm not going to say that hurt won't happen, and I'm not going to say that if you follow Jesus, life will be all gummy bears and rainbows and gumdrops, and I don't know why I would even say that. What I am saying to you is that at the end of the day, death might come, but death has lost its sting in Jesus. And Christ is seated. The resources that I need and you need for our anxiety and our fear and our lust and our pride and our anger and our struggles are all found in the finished work of Jesus, and you can place your trust in him today. Would you join me in prayer? You can bow your heads and close your eyes just for a moment of privacy and concentration before God. If you're here and you say, John, I came in here disconnected from God. I came in here maybe questioning, maybe skeptical, maybe somewhat convinced, but this morning something has shifted in my heart, and I know I need Jesus. I want to place my trust in him. I need his forgiveness. I want to turn from my sins, from my wrong mindset, from doing things my own way. I want to follow Jesus. If that's you right now, I just want you to shoot your hand up in the air. Say, John, you're talking to me. I want to follow Jesus. Awesome. You can put it right back down. If you say, John, I want to follow Jesus. I need to be forgiven. I want him to be my leader. Even there in your chair, you can begin to pray to him. God, I hear you. I'm listening. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Change me. Maybe you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, but you've gotten stuck in old habits and old life habits and old thought habits, and you need to be set free, to recommit even now, to set your mind on things above, not on things of earth. If that's you, I want you to shoot your hand up in the air. Say, John, you're talking to me. Hands going up all over the room. God, you see every single hand lifted to you. Would you do something where you transform us right now and in the daily process as we set our minds on things above, not on things of earth. Transform us in the renewing of our minds. You can stand to your feet. If I get our altar workers and our prayer partners up at the front, if you raised your hand for any of the above things, or maybe you've just got a situation or an issue in your life and you could really benefit from receiving prayer, we've got some of our prayer partners, some of our leaders, microchurch leaders up here. They're just great people who love Jesus and have given their time and their lives really to help other people in their journeys, in their spiritual journeys, in their life journeys. If you need prayer for anything we talked about this morning or anything in general, we've watched God literally heal physical bodies miraculously. We would love to pray and agree with you. Jamie, why don't you lead us in the final chorus? And as soon as we do, the altars are open. You're welcome to come forward for prayer.